Hey everyone, Irene Lyon here. Welcome to this video, to this channel, and to this entire world of healing trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. Today I have an interview chat for you with one of my alumni, Sandra, who is someone who went through my 12-week program called Smart Body, Smart Mind. If you don't know what this is, we will link the links below so that you can check that out. Smart Body, Smart Mind, it's a curriculum I've been teaching for many years now. In the year 2022, we've done this about 11 times with people all around the world. And one of the things I wanted to share with you regarding Sandra's journey is her shift in her diabetic nature. So she's been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. We talk about this in our chat. And what has been so interesting for her is that as she learns more self-regulation and learns to connect more with her environment and all the things that are taught within this curriculum, she has found that there has been a shift in her need for insulin, which is a huge, huge deal. Now, I'm not claiming that she has been healed from diabetes. However, as you'll see, she is healthy and vibrant and doing very well. And so I wanted to share this story because it is definitely, we know through the research, specifically the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, and we even mentioned that in our chat, that early childhood stress and dysregulation has the potential to create various illnesses later in life, such as heart disease, certain types of cancer, and diabetes would fit in there because it is an autoimmune disorder, kind of by definition, at least type 1 diabetes is. So have a listen to her story, and of course, if you have any questions, please post them in the comments below, and we will be sure to get to them. And then, of course, if you ever want to join one of my 2 programs, my online programs, either Smart Body, Smart Mind, or the 21-day nervous system tune-up, I encourage you to do so, to check all that information out near this video. Enjoy our chat. Welcome, Sandra, to this world.
Thank you, Irene.
I'm going to read something that you sent me in a moment. And the story that we're going to weave through is your journey with diabetes, being diagnosed with type 2, and then eventually type 1. I want you to share that a little bit. But tell people, who you are, what you do, what are you doing in your life? What did you used to do?
Yeah, I'm currently 62 and I live in Nanaimo, BC, just across the water from Irene, who's in Vancouver. Yeah. I am living currently now in the town where I grew up. I grew up south of town on a little bit of waterfront. It was gorgeous, but we were kind of land rich, cash poor. So I always thought I had a fantastic childhood because I was always down at the beach with the family dog, looking for bullheads in the tidal pools and poking around. And so anyway, let's skip ahead a little bit. I ultimately became a journalist and spent 25 years writing for the Times Colonist newspaper, which is the island's main daily newspaper. Mm-hmm. I always loved to write. Writing's my thing. So my mom was the biggest fan of my writing. She would tell all the folks in the seniors' home about what Sandra was working on. And she was like the point person. If anybody had a story among the seniors and all their grandchildren, go to Evelyn because she'll get it to her daughter and they'll write a story about it. Well, how these things go. Mm-hmm. But yeah, anyway, I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 45, just a routine blood test. I had no symptoms. And I think it was a shock to the doctor as well as me that I came back with an A1C of 9, which puts my average glucose at 12 or 13. And, normal people are at 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. So I was well along the journey of being diabetic. And I did the usual treatments of taking oral medications, but after a year or so, they weren't working. So I went straight to insulin. I thought, well, if it's a natural substance, it's supposed to be in your body, although this is synthetic, just give it to me because I'm tired of failing all these blood tests. So ultimately, Yeah, I went on to insulin, gained a lot of weight because that's what insulin does. And then in 2016, my mom passed away. And all through this period, all through my dad passed away in 2008. My siblings and I have always been at odds. We've always been in our own particular little silos. I never could figure out why I couldn't be a sister. They didn't want me to be a sister to them. And it all kind of came to a head around my mother's death, as family deaths seem to do. They seem to bring out the best and the worst of us. So following her death, I decided I was really going to write.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I wanted to write a lovely story about how my mother loved me to write, and she was my biggest fan. But as I kind of began to look at my life, well, I went to my first writing workshop, and I wrote this, 10 pages about how my mother loved me to write, and they said, "You have to write a memoir." And I'm going, "No, I'm nobody. Not ordinary people don't write memoirs. I'm nothing famous." But then I sat down to write, and over 3 weeks, sitting on a kitchen chair and wrecking my back, I wrote 60,000 words. And it all just sort of spilled out, every conflict after conflict after conflict, and like literally sleepless nights. So that now 12 drafts later, I'm still sitting on the manuscript because things keep happening. So I have to keep updating it. It just may be one of those books that never ends. It may be War and Peace at the end of it. So
Encyclopedia.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read something, Sandra, that you sent me. This is the revamped intro to your memoir. Small portion of it, and then we can get into your experiences in learning about the ACEs and trauma and healing the nervous system and all that. So you write, "At my father's memorial service, my brother takes to the podium and tells those gathered that my birth being unexpected, that mom and dad wanted 2 children, not 3. The disclosure that I wasn't wanted prompts me to flee the chapel and burst into tears. Later, I see this as an important piece of information. Knowing my parents, dad would have blamed mom for getting pregnant. Mom would have buried her stress, which would emerge as migraine headaches, depression, and anxiety. The fight or flight hormone cortisol would course through her body and her fetus. By the time I take my first breath, I would be awash in stress. My mother's lack of attunement, her inability to express love openly or make eye contact with an infant set me up for a life where I distrust others, yet seek love. I withhold anger and sadness because my mother couldn't handle the," and then you have in quotes, "bad emotions. I'm not close to my older 2 siblings. One doesn't talk to me at all. The other talks but steers clear of anything emotional in nature. I am the only one of us that married, and that union lasted a dozen years. None of us have children."
Sounds normal, right?
It does. It's very normal.
It's funny how we all come from normal childhoods until we start talking to each other, and quite often from my generation, there are similar threads. And from my generation, we're all fighting some sort of autoimmune issue. The funny thing about my dad's memorial is the 3 of us each went and said our piece. I said mine first, thank God, because I didn't know what was coming. And then my brother, and then my other sibling. My mother loved them all, and she kept them all in a book. And I said to her later, "But Mom, you must have told him that I was not wanted. Why would you do that? And can you talk more about that?" And she wouldn't go there. So, but I still think that was a really important bit of information. And once I kind of got over the shock and the emotional part of it, I thought, wow, that really fits into the whole scheme of things about stress and the underlying stress.
100%. And I actually just did a video on the connection between migraine, headache, early trauma, and one other element, anxiety. And so it's interesting you name pretty much those things right here with your mom.
Yeah.
And how it just becomes normal. This is what people deal with. When did you come across the ACEs, the concept of the adverse childhood experiences?
I think it was about 8 years ago, and the guy I was then dating took me to his family's Christmas deal, and a fellow was chatting to me about how his back hurt, but he was pretty sure it was a mind-body thing, and I was curious about that, and he said, "Oh, you have to read Gabor Mate's book, When the
When the
Body
body
Says
says
No."
no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I read it, and I thought, "Oh my God." Even though he didn't talk about anybody diabetic, I could see all these things in here that explained that question of why am I diabetic? So of course it was the edition that had his email in the front, so I wrote to him. And he wrote back.
Yeah.
And he said, "Thanks for writing. Can I interview you for my book, and can I read your manuscript?"
Wow.
And yeah, so he interviewed me for the book that's coming out this September. I didn't make the cut, but never mind, I am a little weird. So anyway, I got through all that research. Then being the journalist, I dove into the research.
Yeah.
And I've read so many scientific papers online. I know, read the beginning, read the end, skip the data in the middle, and you can find out what's going on. And at that time, I was looking at type 2 and early childhood, and the whole ACE study came up. I did the ACE study. I kept coming up. I would get a score of 4. And I'm thinking, then I'd put it away for a while. And it's just how the mind blurs things over. Then I'd come back to it, and I thought, that can't be right. And I did it again. And no matter how honestly I looked at those questions, I kept coming up with 4.
Yeah.
And I loved, you ran a video recently about the man that came up with the ACE questionnaire.
Vincent Felitti, yeah.
His story really moved me. And it's so amazing how the best discoveries come out of something quite accidental. And, but regardless, when I look at all the research and how much is put on, there was another paper on like divorce or losing a family member or, that kind of trauma, but nobody really looked at emotional neglect. Nobody looked at children who were banished for being angry or, showing tears because mom couldn't handle the tears or the anger.
You got it.
And it's all underplayed, the impact of this kind of child rearing, and it's generational. My mom didn't do it on purpose. She was raised the same way. Both my parents had one English parent. And that whole British element of no, pull yourself together, stiff upper lip, all that kind of thing. So I think it's just super interesting. And I keep trying to wonder if I'm just making this stuff up to look for an excuse. But no, I think there's something really there. And then I find you and all your work reassures me that I'm on the right path for healing. So
yeah. Yeah, and just for those listening who aren't familiar, the ACE study is Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. Vincent Felitti, who was the head researcher who literally stumbled into the findings accidentally. We won't go into the history. I've done another audio on that. We'll link it near this video. And the video, the tribute to him, is maybe what you watched, which is beautiful and I remember crying watching it, and he also teared up in it because he came from that good family, affluence, but nobody talked to each other.
Oh, the dog would make the rounds through the house. He said the dog would visit, and that struck with me, is that there was our family dog who would hang out with me. Is the dog would connect them all, and that just is so poignant.
100, yeah. I'll post that because it's a really lovely, it's about 18 minutes maybe, and he goes through the history of the ACE study, and he has a similar story to even Gabor Mate, Sandra. I don't know if you've heard this story that Mate often says is back in the day when he used to lecture at medical schools, he would present the ACE study research, which is very compelling. Like one could say it's fact, because it's so statistically significant and shown all around the world in other cultures, countries. And so he shows the data room full of physicians and doctors, auditorium, and no one ever has any questions. And a lot of people will leave during the lecture. And a lot of people will clear their throats, like they'll get dry throat, which, as you know, and many of my students know, is a sign of the sympathetic nervous system getting constricted, because the person is hearing something that actually is resonating, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing him tell that story because Felitti said something similar. It is so darn hard to get this into establishment because it means everything has to be rewritten in how we treat pretty much most forms of illness, cancer, autoimmune, mental illness, addiction, etc.
I had an appointment yesterday with a diabetes educator, and their job is to teach you to get better insulin control and, be a better diabetic. And I just went in like I always go into these people, with storming in with such an attitude because I'm so angry I'm there. But, when I bring up mind body and the fact that I can meditate about my mother holding me as an infant and my glucose drops, how do you explain that? And how do you explain that I go into a nice, warm, sudsy bath and my glucose spikes? How do you explain that? And it's like I'm talking Swahili or something. It's hard to get through that, and I get that sort of stone-faced with doctors too. Most doctors. Some doctors are awesome, but they're few and far between.
I agree. Tell me about the entry point into doing the nervous system work through my courses, through Smart Body, Smart Mind. What was how was your initiation into that work?
Through some bumps in the road in life, I went to the same counselor just for talk therapy, but she was great. But at some point she suggested somatic experiencing therapy. So I found a local practitioner and went to her, and she just said I had a S-load of trauma in my body. And was I aware I never made eye contact? Yeah, kinda. I mean, if I'm the one in control doing interviews, it's absolutely no problem. I'm drilled in, I'm dialed in, but don't look at me. You're like, don't.
Yeah.
So I got into that. But I did that for a while, and I would find that, whereas I have a history of having no benefit from exercise, my glucose does not drop when I walk generally. After the sessions, it would drop a little bit when I would do the dog walk. So I sensed something was shifting a bit, but really, realistically, you can't pay somebody, over $100 an hour to put a hand on your kidney. It's going to take a long time, and I had to find another way. So I just found your videos online. One little trick, and it seemed like such a small thing, but of course, it's huge, is when anyone would say my name over the years, I would brace. My name became toxic. Because when anyone used my name from my parents or my siblings or my husband for a while, it was when they were mad at me. And saying Sandra to me, just kind of something in me just braced, and I told her that, and she said, okay, well, just lie down. She took my head, or her hands around my head, and she held me, and she said, we're going to sing your name. And she sang it, and then I sang it. And do you know that detoxified my name? Just that one little stint. So
wow,
that was worth it.
Yeah. Oh, and I say that, yes, sometimes it is very important to get some one-on-one work. And as you've learned, and I want to hear more about your SBSM experience, so much can be done on your own with proper, obviously, guidance and respecting your limits and pacing yourself and all that kind of stuff. What year did you do Smart Body, Smart Mind first? Do you remember?
Well, this is my third year, and I don't do numbers, so you figure it out. It's like 2019 maybe.
Back there.
Yeah. But that was, that was the year I was also hiking. I did 1,000 kilometers over the summer, just in the hills around Nanaimo, with my dog, and I just connected with nature. And even though the exercise didn't really lower my blood sugar, well, it didn't. I think just feeling connected to beautiful trees and the lushness and just getting out in the woods is so healthy for you. And it does things that you can't measure. And I'm kind of stuck with the thing about diabetes is I can measure the glucose on my phone, but I have to remember there's other ways to measure wellness. So,
Right.
yeah.
It's more than just the scientific data.
Yeah, and the SBSM course was sort of still on the tail end of an inheritance, and I thought, well, I got to invest in my own health, and I had a feeling, because you believed in what Gabor Mate believes, that this was a good path for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it is.
Perfect. No, it's perfect. I remember seeing the photos of you hiking. I think we have one of those somewhere. And you mentioned too, can you share the story about hiking with a friend, and you noticed that when you were in connection, there was a shift in your blood glucose levels?
Yeah, I mean, after so many kilometers, miles of hiking, one of my neighbors said, "Hey, can I come? I want to go." So I took him down through one of my favorite hikes, and where I was used to getting a certain rise in glucose, I didn't get it because we were chattering the whole time. And I'm sure we were talking about the vagus nerve in the course at that time, and how connecting with your mother early in life, and if you didn't get it, you connect later. But just being able to have that social connection. And I have to say I'm not terribly good at making friends, and it takes people like that to say, "Hey, I want to go hiking with you. What time are we leaving?" And yeah, it was one of those eye-opening moments. And the other part was just grounding myself and hiking a hill I'd hiked before, and having the glucose monitor mimic the summit I was climbing, and then just doing the orienting, doing the grounding, feeling the ground under my feet, feeling the air come into my nose and into my lungs. I got to the top, and I still have that selfie I took of how ecstatic I was that exercise spike stopped. And I have not had an exercise spike since. So
wow.
that has changed, and I'm thinking, if that can change, what else can change? So
this is really cool. I want to trace back something, because you said when you were first diagnosed with what was thought to be type 2 diabetes when you were 45, you were fit.
Oh yeah, I was riding horses, and and I mean, not just riding, I was jumping, I was doing the really heavy duty stuff. I had a farm, I had a hobby farm, I was running on my own. Yeah, I was super fit, I ate really well, and I was relatively, a good weight. I mean, I like to drink a lot of wine in those days, and the chips and the pizza that go with it, but
sure.
That was part of the riding community's social connection. So I didn't understand why I was diagnosed, because I didn't seem to have any of those typical symptoms. So
for type 2 diabetes,
for type
which
2.
Is being overweight, not active, not a lot of muscle mass, all those things. So it's interesting, because then in the memoir the intro, you had mentioned that eventually you were diagnosed with type 1.
Yeah.
Which is more indicative of an autoimmune condition, as we know, with type 1 diabetes. Where are you now with insulin? Because the piece I wanted to connect, so your journalism mind might see where I'm going with this, is you were active. You were in the outdoors at your 40s.
Yeah.
But that alone wasn't enough to shift your glucose levels.
No.
And so would you say, and I'd love to hear your expression of this, that really this reconnection with the somatic body, maybe for the first time ever, learning these skills of being not just in nature, but how to connect with it properly, was what did the trick?
Which trick? I'm sorry. How do you?
Of being able to actually have your glucose levels not spike when you're outside exercising.
I think,
think?
that was sort of the canvas where I did my exercising. I think it could happen anywhere, but I think just kind of being alone with my own thoughts. And I think being alone with my own thoughts is what got me sick as well. It can have a detriment, right? Yeah. Because I used to find that old memories, old fights, old disputes, old why didn't they love me thoughts would come up. But then when you're constantly grounding yourself and being present, you're not having those thoughts. And there goes the impetus to have the blood spike. Yeah, so my insulin now, I mean, I started off initially, I had two types of insulin. Most, I think, hardcore diabetics have a long-term insulin and a short-term insulin, which, you know, the long-term you take every evening and the other one you have for meal spikes. But yeah, I just dropped the long-term insulin because I felt it was making me fat, and then I just kind of slowly got higher and higher glucose levels until about 6 weeks ago, I guess, I got an appointment with an endocrinologist, which is a diabetes doctor. And as part of that, he sent me for blood tests and everything under the sun in my body. I got the full test, and I thought, in a little bit of trepidation of like, how bad is it? Because I know I haven't been good. I know I've been letting things go a bit high because I don't like the weight gain.
Right.
And in order to control the weight gain, I have to fast. And nobody likes to fast, but at least it was a way of bringing it down. The blood test came back spectacular. I've got the highest good cholesterol one of the practitioners had ever seen. My heart health the heart health is a major concern for diabetics.
Of course.
You know, I'm at a minimal risk for a cardiovascular issue. The only thing that's wrong with me is bad blood and bad urine that I'm peeing out the glucose. So, you know, then that I kind of ask the question of, well, why treat it if it's not hurting me?
Yeah.
So I don't know. The other thing I've been pursuing is with a naturopath and doing measures of cortisol in my system. And I know there's different opinions on endocrine failure, but the last cortisol test I did was 2 years ago, and I'm getting the results next week for the most recent one. So I'm curious to see if they've come up at all, because they were scraping the bottom. My cortisol's burned out.
Right. So it's possible it shifted a little bit.
Hope so.
Yeah, well, wonderful. Congrats. That's so great to hear. Super. Anything that you would like to share with those listening, watching? Obviously, we're talking on my channel where people are snooping around, poking around. What is the stuff that this crazy lady Irene is doing that is not, you know, traditional therapy or even traditional somatic experiencing? Since you've done the talk therapy, the SC work, all which have value, what would you say to those that are looking at considering even joining one of my programs in the future?
Well, I think it's got the best of both worlds. If you're someone like me that likes to kind of take agency over your own health, you can dive in there and do it to whatever extent you want. At the same time, you've still got the support of you and your team to answer questions and to support for those who are having, you know, traumatic memories or having to deal with scary stuff. And you know, as you explained, a lot of stuff is held in the body, and it's not always easy to understand why we gasp or we have a nightmare or whatever's going on. So I think I kind of drift back and forth between going away and saying, I'm going to go do my own stuff for a while. I'm going to keep it, I'm going to run it around in my head. Then I'm going to come back and touch base with the program and the group and join a call and see what's going on with the gang. But, you know, I think what I particularly like is that freedom to come and go and still kind of, or write in and talk to the group and see, hey, has anybody else got these experiences? And somebody usually pipes up. So it's just that lovely idea of being in a group and you're all in a journey together.
Super. Yeah, I saw you on the training call 2 weeks ago, I think. So yeah, that's the other thing, is a person can come back and join whenever they want, when we're in session, of course, live, and all the materials are there. Is there a favorite practice that you learned through the Smart Body, Smart Mind courses, or one that you keep coming back to that's like kind of in your back pocket?
Well, it sounds horribly simple, but it's orienting. I mean, like, where am I? What's going on in my body? What's going on out my body? And quite often, it's not until I tune into my body that I feel something is going on, because I wasn't paying attention to it. The other day I had a strange pain in the middle of my thigh. Like, what could be causing that? And I don't know what that is. But let's just hang out with it for a while. Let's see what's going on. And until you do the program, you don't really pay attention to these things. And it could be something, it could be nothing. But, you know, let's just see what's going on. So I think orienting and it just keeps me present, and it keeps me, because I think like a lot of us who drift off, your brain can take you all kinds of nasty places. And
yes, it can.
You got to just be able to say, okay, let's just chill. And I also do meditation, so.
Beautiful.
All right.
Thank you so much, Sandra.
Thank you, Irene.
You're welcome.